Dive into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, and business with Caplander, hosted by Jody and Morgan of J. Thielander Consulting. Whether you're invested in the private capital markets, building your own venture, or curious about the entrepreneurial spirit, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping today's market and the people driving what's next. Caplander connects the dots between personal and professional life because how you do anything is how you do everything. Featuring expert guests, deep discussions, and a dynamic mother-daughter duo, Caplander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Morgan. Nice to be here in studio in St. Louis.
I feel like it's kind of funny because I'm normally like sitting at my computer at my desk at home and I'm looking at you across the table.
I like it both ways, but we'll see how this goes.
I think it's good. I think it's good to mix it up.
Yeah, we'll try. I mean, it's more professional.
Well, we are professional people.
Yes, we are professional entrepreneurs, professional mother-daughter duo, professional executives of a company and consultants. So
It is. And I think sometimes because the podcast, especially when we're on doing it virtually, it's really easy to kind of talk more casually in some ways and really get more into like the mother-daughter piece of it, because obviously that's really comfortable. But the reality is that the podcast itself really started from more of a business lane, and now we're 60 episodes in practically, and it's evolved. But I think some of the things that we've come back to have really brought us to our topic today.
Okay, well, let's go.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, so we've had a lot of inbounds and people really understand what we do who are in the market, and we've seen this even from Google Search Console. People who know what we do find us, but then there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect, or like building a stronger bridge from people who are looking for what we do, but they don't quite know us. Exactly. They don't know us and what we do to provide those services.
Well, you have to appreciate spanning a business over 30 years, which we see really has given us a strength in the marketplace, and also a lot of roots in venture firms and with companies. There's a legacy, but with it, then that's our sort of the business started as friends and family of Jody. And then of course it grew from there, but then there's a whole universe of companies and founders and investors that we are still trying to get to know, or to even introduce ourselves to, because as we know, sort of the American way of being innovative and being entrepreneurs is that it never ends.
No. It doesn't end. And actually, I think what's really interesting now is how it's evolved. And I think that the dust has settled a little bit more to be able to see what the next wave of American entrepreneurship looks like. And we talked about this ahead of time, but really how the 9-to-5, the corporate job, the going to work for a structured amount of time, more and more people are feeling like, from a wealth side, that that's not going to get them where they want to be fast enough.
I think the wealth side is a big piece of it, but it's also from a satisfaction side and being able to have their own personality involved in their career. So a corporation really gets the job done in terms of 401k matching and also career development.
Benefits.
Yes, the benefits, stability. Entrepreneurs and innovators like ours in the company, we've had years that are just on fire. We've had months that are on fire. And then we've had times when it's a little more tapped down. And you just know that, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, that's the cycle. But when you're with a corporation, your salary and your benefits are not affected by changes in the marketplace, as long as your job and your skill set still exist.
Right. As long as you don't get laid off, then yes,
Right.
There is more stability around that. But I think that there's more. I mean, this has been published in the Wall Street Journal. I've seen this on social media even being circulated, that more Americans than ever are making money outside in addition to having...
Yeah, they have side hustles.
Exactly. They have side hustles, and the side hustles are lucrative. And part of that is social media. And then the other part of that are online shops like Etsy and Amazon.
Absolutely, where people can be creative and they already have a framework
Totally.
and they don't have to have an online presence of their own, and they can already go into a structure that works, but it gives them a chance to have other income and also to be able to do something they love and make money at it, or an idea that they had.
Right. And I think that's really kind of like that's the first part of this, is that you see people who start something, and then there's the entrepreneur that falls into the entrepreneur category in general, is that you have your own company. Where the entrepreneur lane starts to split is where we work with entrepreneurs who get into raising capital.
Right. So that's not the entrepreneur who's on Etsy. That's an entrepreneur who has a little bit more of a boil the oceans mentality. So they know the only way, and they have some urgency. So they know they need to scale or be the first one into this market, or they need to do something better and faster than somebody else. And with that, they need capital, and they
Right.
cannot have that capital needs to be raised from either outside investors or some other, means of giving up some of the ownership of the company.
Right. Well, that's really where, when we say outside capital, we have to be specific, because it really falls into venture capital, private equity.
Right.
I mean, private equity, I don't think is where people are going off the bat, just by the nature of the different types of firms.
Well, let's even back this up further. So venture capital tends to really grow companies. They can come in, they're early stage investors, which means they give you less money, they get equity in return, and they start from the time the company is almost could be at inception.
Right.
And
It could be a proof, it could be an idea.
Right. So VCs go all the way through to a company that could be a late stage company.
Right.
Versus private equity typically comes in with a company that likely has not raised outside capital. They are not growing companies. They are investing in mature companies, but that maybe fit into a suite of portfolio. So it's a completely different time of a company's life cycle.
Well, people get very upset about private equity firms because they come in and they're notorious for trimming the fat. They want to.
Yeah, someone built it in private equity, somewhat dismantles it. But
Right.
okay, that's a different discussion.
Right. And then the other piece of it, well, this is like Rouse, the red sauce, right? Rao was the guy.
Rouse,
Rouse.
R-A-O.
RAO, like the
Right,
red sauce.
right.
And
I don't cook.
it
I
was
don't really go down the red sauce aisle, but I go down the froyo aisle or other things.
You pull the lever in the store. And people were very upset because they could taste the difference in the quality of the sauce.
Right.
Because they didn't want to use the same tomatoes that the original owner was using. They wanted
Right.
to use something that would save them money so that they could make more of a profit. Whereas if we go back to venture capital, because I think that's really the most, especially for somebody who's a founder and a CEO of their own company, you also have accelerators like Y Combinator. You have programs that you can apply to. I think A16Z has these types of accelerator incubators.
Right. Founders Fund, Peter Thiel, who
exactly.
came, was an entrepreneur himself. You see a lot of this.
Right. And a lot of that is really why that's so attractive, is because if you don't have those connections to get into the investment firms, it's a stamp of approval. Like if you've been through Y
Even Shark
Combinator,
Tank, it's the same thing.
it is, because it's something where it gives you exposure. And obviously, if you're getting to that point where you have something that you could even be applying to, then you've got some sort of traction. Or you're a really impressive founder, and that's especially for a first-time founder, CEO. For, I think, venture capital firms talk about this a lot. It's really about the person.
It's crazy to me, isn't it, that they, in some cases, the investors say consistently that founders, I just read an article on this, founders have this certain either temperament or personality, which really culminates with someone who's extremely ambitious, someone who will not back down, someone in the face of defeat keeps finding a way.
Right.
They're creative, they're hustlers, they're almost disruptive. They have minds and brains that work in a way where no matter what, they are going to be successful.
Well, maybe that's worth a point to kind of hold on to, because we've interviewed and we've had so many guests on our podcast who are founders and CEOs. And what would you say you see as the consistent through lines?
They believe in themselves. They have a lot of confidence, and they believe in their product or what their business is developing and doing. And they also really are fearless in that they know, just like I said, business can be good, business can be challenging, but it's going to stand the test of time. I feel that way,
Yeah.
right? We've had this whole discussion about you who tends to worry at times, although I think this pregnancy of yours has helped sort of
Move me out of that a
has
little
moved you
bit.
out of that. Maybe that's your growing edge, is that
Right.
because your soon to be daughter out in the world
My
has been
gosh.
very persistent to not want to go from her current breech position to her position to be able to be delivered in the world without a cesarean section. And I think you have now you've given up control of this to say
Yeah.
you just want her to be healthy, and however it goes, it goes. And I think for you, that has been a learning curve. And for me, I, as an entrepreneur, have always been very, things can upset me and they can worry me at times, but nothing would make me think about giving up the business or the company. And here I am 30 years later.
Yeah. I think it's that inherent feeling of belief, that you believe in the business you built, you believe in the product you've built, you believe in the services you
Yeah,
offer.
you know you can do something that no one else can, and you think to yourself, who better to do this than me?
Right. But I do think the asterisk part of this is that does not mean that any entrepreneur or founder is immune from pivoting.
Right. Oh, we hear this over and over, is
Yeah.
the
And I think
agility. Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it, because believing in the product, believing in the business is one piece, but then also being willing and open that the business might look different
Than what you thought.
than what you thought.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I
absolutely.
think that agility piece is really critical, because the market changes and the market moves. And if you're not able to flow and weave with that, then I think that's where you get stuck.
And I also think it's more than being able to flow and to weave with it, but it's sort of liking it. I kind of feel,
It's like whack-a-mole.
yeah, that whatever comes my
Right.
way, I think to
Right.
myself, I have to be ready mentally and physically and emotionally. And I kind of like the ability to know
I
that,
hate that.
yeah.
I hate that piece. That piece where I'm like,
You never liked it
I
even
feel
as a
like,
kid.
no, I feel like I'm standing there like with like the raccoon, like with the hands up, like when they open the trash bin and you're like, wow. Like,
Do you remember when your brother, when you were in elementary school in Mill Valley, and you were down on the lower playground, and your brother
oh
was
my
on the upper
gosh,
playground, and someone
it
said
was
to you,
reversed.
"Yeah, is your brother
No, this was
who's
reversed.
screaming?"
No, my brother and I are wired differently, and we are a little bit slightly more than 2 years apart. But the elementary school that I went to had the upper playground and the lower playground,
Right.
and I was in third grade and he was in first grade. And I remember standing on the edge of the upper playground looking down at him. And he's standing like in the middle of the actual playground, and
Right.
he has a handful of tan bark in his hand, and he is like
Picked up from the
right, he has
right.
picked it up from the ground, and he's
Yeah.
like throwing it, and then in between the throwing it, he's standing there like stiff armed, and he's putting his head back, and he's making sounds like a car alarm. And I remember looking at him being like,
And someone said to you, "Is that your brother?"
no, it's not. Does not belong to me.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Well, you see this on TV shows when someone's like, "Okay,
It is.
just give me a second. I have to get out of the car," and basically scream. And I've had those moments, but I always get back in the car, stay the course.
Right. But I think part of that is that moment of relief. And I think having that outlet is really important. And there's been a lot of executives who talk about hustle culture. And there's been a lot of people who are like, you don't get anything done just sitting at your desk 10 hours a day. Like, it's not
Right.
actually good for you. Like at Pixar, right? The a part of Disney now, they have a pool at their office. They have a gym at the office.
Right. They want people to have
They
outlets.
want people. They're like, we know that.
I get that.
Right.
And you always say to me that you have to track what I'm doing and where I'm going, because
I've never met a CEO who sits at their desk less than you.
Yeah, I have to be
don't.
moving and active because it helps stimulate the stream of consciousness. Also, the outside factor, seeing the world, seeing what other people are doing,
Right.
helps give me ideas. But let's go back to the founder whole
Yes.
thing. So when a founder, long way around, when a founder raises capital from some outside,
Let's give an
either
example. I'm a founder. I started a company. I have proof of concept. I have customers, but I only have so much money in the bank.
Right, and you see that you maybe have gotten a little money from friends and family, but now it's time to really
I need to
raise.
hire people.
Yeah, you need to raise what they call an institutional round.
Yep.
So you speak with venture capitalists and you talk to family offices in one way or another. Now you have raised some kind of what they call institutional money, which could be around 5, 10, $15 million. In today's world, even
It's
with
gotten bigger.
these earlier rounds, because they're taking longer to raise, they're raising more capital. But regardless of the dollar amount, at some point you raise this money and you've gone from being the founder who maybe owns 75 to 95% of the company. And all of a sudden, you've been what they call diluted, meaning, the pie has gotten bigger and your piece has gotten smaller.
You have to explain that.
So you used to own all of the company. Maybe you raised a friends and family round so that you gave a little bit of your equity away. So you no longer own 100% of the company, but you still own the majority. Like I said, it could be 75, 80, 90,
Right.
95% of the company. But when you raise some kind of institutional money from investors, they take a big piece of your company right out of the starting gate. So now you've been diluted, meaning the part that you own has now been diluted down to a smaller percentage. So while the
Why
pie,
do I give a shit? Why do I care about getting diluted?
well, you don't own as much.
Okay, but
And
why? Why do I care? Like, why for me does that matter to get it right?
because the likelihood of you not needing to raise more capital is probably not even reasonable. Like, this may be what is your first round, but
Right.
it's likely that you're going to have to continue to raise more capital, because if you really have a big concept, let's say you're an AI company or you have some kind of medical device or you're a biotech company, to get to from where you are now to some liquidity takes more money. And with every time you raise money, what you own, that piece of your pie gets smaller, even though the pie gets bigger. Meaning, if you have a company that's raised $50 million, the pie is one size. Now, if you raise another $100 million and you've got $150 million all in of outside capital, the pie has gotten bigger, but your slice keeps getting smaller. So it's really important to know, have you been getting the right amount? And as you continue to get your smaller piece of the pie, is that still the right amount? Is that pie slice the correct size? Is it too small? Do you need another little piece of a pie so that you can add that into what you originally had as your founder's shares? Do you need to be getting a little more because of the role that you're currently in? And all of this discussion is something that really, I think, a lot of founders feel like, oh, I'll be taken care of, or this will just work itself out.
I two pieces of this. One is that, yes, it's about the pie, obviously, and then the slice and how much of the pie you own.
Right.
Like, what's your
Yes, it
piece
is.
is it? But then the other part of that is that equity piece, that founder equity piece, and then also the non-founder equity pieces that you're giving to employees
Right.
that you hire or that your investors hold, or if you have 3 investors for later on compared to the one you started with, including the friends and family who might have a percent here or a percent there, whatever. Regardless, that is the potential for wealth creation.
Right. You're not going to make, really, even in any company, you're not going to make your wealth from just getting your salary.
Right. Well, that's really what I wanted to get to. Is like why a founder or a CEO cares. And actually, we see this so much more now down to the staff level individuals, because there is so much sexiness surrounding startups
Right.
because of this equity component, the pie
Well,
piece
the
of this.
OpenAI and what's happened with SpaceX. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I think part of that is where we get a lot of questions, especially, and like we track first, second, third time founder CEOs in terms of their compensation. And there is a very clear divide in the data between a first time CEO founder and a third time, because you see
But they know more.
they know more, and also they've been successful at it, and they are saying, okay, I'm not taking less equity and I'm definitely not taking less cash, because my runway for how many rounds of financing or whatever I'm doing, how much capital I'm raising, could take longer.
Right. Well, I think that's an important point, because it is, if you are confident, you realize you can negotiate and you don't have to give up anything.
Well, it's not just confidence, it's data.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
I
that.
love that.
It's
Perfect
data.
segue for
Yeah, it's
Thielander.
data. And so I think really where I want to build the Golden Gate Bridge times 4 over this divide, because I think what's really important is that founder CEO, regardless of how much capital you've raised, you always need to have your finger on the pulse of what your mix of cash and equity look like for yourself and your key players.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sort of wind up is that it does not have to be a guessing game. Asking ChatGPT can give you some information, but you don't know whether that's particular to your situation and
I don't know if
how
it's
your industry. You
accurate.
don't know if it's accurate, and at least that's one thing that Thielander does very well is that we run surveys. And we collect our data from companies we know exist because we that all if someone comes in with a Gmail address, we don't accept that information. We have to know that it's a real company.
Right.
We also do job leveling because just because you say it's a VP title or a director title or a chief title does not make it true out in when you're calibrating it against the marketplace. And we do that. So the job leveling is really important. And then in addition to that, we have a sense of, ranges for each job title, and we are able to really clarify where data should be going.
I think people care less about those pieces and more about the fact that there's also expertise behind it.
Well, and then it's only private companies. I was asked this earlier on a call the day before we came here to record. A company asked what the difference between Thielander and Radford was.
Right.
And I'm very clear that Radford mixes public and private data together and that they don't have large enough sample sizes in their private data just to use that exclusively. And that's where we don't mix any public and private data. It's just private company data.
What do you say back to a company? Like, I got asked this from a private biotech company, and they were like, well, we're recruiting people from public companies. So why wouldn't we want to have them mixed together? Because that's where we're taking talent from.
Well, I think it's good to understand what the public markets are paying, but the reality is in a private company, you have to have a comp philosophy and a structure that's workable based on the amount of money that you've raised and what the company can withstand. And the public company data is missing the entire piece of equity. And obviously you want somebody, regardless of their experience, to want to come to a private company because they're hungry for that equity.
Right.
And so it may be that you can't afford to pay them what they were making in their public company job, and it's really up to that individual to want it. And you have to be willing to walk away from a candidate because not everybody may be the right person for your company, for your organization.
I think that's an important piece of it, because the reality is that the executive compensation is one piece, but the staff level individuals, which is anybody
They're making
from
so little equity anyhow.
it's entry level to, like, when we say staff level, we say entry level through like up until the director level, right? So that could be a number 5 software engineer. That could be a manager.
Yeah, manager communications, marketing, business
Anything like that,
development.
right?
Yeah.
But those people can be very important for a company.
Then there's very little difference, if any, between public and private data for these jobs because equity is a very small part. But it's still, and we're seeing, can be very compelling if the company ends up being wildly successful. So it's important to have data that at least is mixing apples and apples.
Yeah. I think I have the abundance mindset on this, where I think that having multiple data sets is really important, especially because if you are pulling somebody like Thielander doesn't collect public company data. That's not our area. We are experts in private capital markets. So having the private company data set that's only private companies is extremely valuable because we're the only ones who have this
Across all the industries, across life sciences
and
and
all
tech.
financing categories too. Like, we're not just early stage companies or just late stage companies. We cover the gamut. And I think having that is beneficial and frankly crucial.
To me, it's like a requirement. It's
Yeah.
like asking what's the difference between organic produce or regular produce? Like, do you want data that has been sprayed with pesticides or something that can be toxic?
There's so many people now who are like, well, the organic pesticides are also still bad. Like, they're not great anyways.
Well, I don't think that's true. And I think that having pure information and pure data and pure produce, organic, they have to go through a different vetting process just like we do. And it's
more
important.
like farmers market stuff.
Yeah, well, whatever. So Morgan, I'd like to talk to you about what you're wearing over here today.
Well, Jody, since you asked, I'm on my, I have now being like, we're recording this and I'm supposed to have this baby in a week.
Well, you're not supposed to be having, I guess it's possible.
It is supposed to, because as you mentioned, this baby is breech and I've thrown the book at her. I've literally done
You've had
I've
acupuncture.
done acupuncture. I've done prenatal chiropractor. It's like called the Webster technique. And to get my uterus open, I've done handstands in a pool.
I've videotaped that.
I've hung off the side of the couch with my butt in the air. Like, I've put an ice pack on her head. I've sat in the bath.
I do kind of
like put an ice pack on her head.
I do kind of like the ice pack on her head thing, because you can
She
feel her
hates
head
that.
is up so high.
She hates it.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely hates it. I've put it's called moxibustion, which are like these little acupuncture things, and you put them on the edge of your pinky toe and then you light them on fire. So I've lit my toes on fire. I've done everything under the sun.
And all she's done is quite literally
go higher,
dig her heels in more
Right.
to lift her head. So it's
Right.
practically jabbing you.
No, it is. Like, I said this to you this morning. I think that there's going to be an imprint on my stomach or my rib cage
Of her head.
because I swear her hands are on my spine, pushing herself back, like making sure that she's not moving.
Well, so one way or another,
this baby's coming out.
by the time this podcast, unless we drop this on Monday,
Yeah, we will
hopefully we
find
could drop the podcast on Monday,
and she
will
with
drop
it.
too.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Do you hear me? I'd like you to please get
Yes,
yourself down.
please
We're
listen.
asking.
Well, one way or another, very exciting.
Yes,
and I
absolutely
love you and very proud of how you've handled this.
Thank
and
you.
You've been a really good sort of co-founder here with you're the founder of Complander, which is another division.
That is.
And you've learned a lot about yourself in terms of how to handle challenging situations in a way where you're like, I'm not going down with this.
I have learned from the best. That is where I've had direct exposure to elite mentality. So I have learned rightly by it. But to answer your last question of it, my maternity clothes journey is coming to an end. But I've gotten my elastic waist J. Crew pants, and then we did go swing by the vault in St. Louis on our way here, and I did pick up this really fancy jacket.
Luxury consignment.
Yes,
so Morgan is the proud
exactly.
wearer
I
of
have
her.
to say, the vault, I love you.
Yep.
Love everything you all do.
Me too.
Yep,
I picked up a few
exactly.
things too. But all
Not
right.
bad. Perfect. Thank you for joining us today for the Caplander podcast. If you loved this episode, share it, and make sure to subscribe to Caplander for more conversations like this.